transit tracking. If you're into astrology, you're probably familiar with this. It's essentially following the movement of the planets in the sky currently and into the future to get a sense for what fortune has in store. And you compare that with your chart. But because there's so many planets, there's so much going on all the time, you get like a kind of excess of meaning that can end up being meaningless. So how do you narrow it down? Specific questions are helpful for this, but ancient astrologers used a timing technique known as annual profections to narrow it down a bit. Essentially how it works is you count each year from the ascendant being 0 to the first year of life, and then on to the 12th house for each year, and then you repeat over and over and over. And the perfected house is sort of the theme of that year, and then you look to the ruler of that house. For instance, for me this year, it was a 9th house year, which is ruled for me by Mercury, because Virgo is the 9th house. Then we look to Mercury in my chart and find it fallen in Pisces in the 3rd house, and that gives a bit more information. Then for the year ahead, you look to see what Mercury is going to be doing that year. And since Mercury moves so fast, you look at its retrogrades. That'll give you some interesting information about what the year ahead has in store, especially when there are aspects being made to that natal Mercury ruling the 9th house. I was in Greece, but right before that I had visited the Gratianum, which is where I now live. And the 9th house is associated with traveling long distance and higher education, and also sort of spiritual journeys. And I've been doing a postdoc project after finishing my PhD in May of 2025, right after my annual Profection 9th house began, and took a journey from the US to this spiritual headquarters of Rudolf Steiner's movement, Anthroposophy, where I've been helping someone write a book, and also involved, I think very Mercury and Pisces in the 3rd house, with the local community here, and working on an experimental light art project, not just doing academic work. I feel like that's very Mercury and Pisces in the 3rd house, because it's being built up by community members here. And to give you an example of tracking the year ahead in connection with transits to my natal Mercury, it just so happens that this year the nodes shifted into South Node in Virgo, North Node in Pisces, so they were lighting up my 3rd and 9th houses, which the whole Profection 9th year ruled by Mercury in the 3rd house makes a kind of central axis of anyway. So when I first arrived in Switzerland in August, I did not yet have my student visa, and I had to go get it in another country in September. And this was when the eclipses were happening in Pisces and Virgo. And on the day that the full moon, the lunar eclipse, happened, September 8th, something like that, 2025, I was traveling from Switzerland to Frankfurt to get my student visa from the Swiss consulate in Frankfurt, Germany, and I lost my passport. Mercury in Pisces, sort of like anxious, dissociated in the train station, over-caffeinated. I ran to the train and dropped my passport, and I got stuck in Germany and had to get an emergency passport. So if you think about it, there's like the combination of the fallen Mercury kind of being a bit anxious, and, in dreamland, in the train station, drops the passport, is making this long distance travel for a document that will allow me to do the student visa postdoc project here in Switzerland, but I have to go to another country, and I end up getting stuck in this other country just for a couple days. But yeah, it really was like a kind of moment where I was like, okay, I really got to work on this fallen Mercury, even though it has all these poetic gifts of sort of intuitively grasping high ideas, very abstract metaphysics, poetic expression perhaps, empathic sensitivity, but also, sometimes being a bit in dreamland sometimes and not being tethered to the ground. So what Profection year are you in? What's the ruler of that house? Where is it placed in your chart? What transits can you expect in the year ahead? Or what has your Profection year been for this last year? What's it been like? Leave a comment and let me know. Let's do some research together.